And it is the 16th day of February 2016. Good evening and welcome to Bottomline East Africa. I'm Yvonne Okwara Matole. The saying in Kiswahili, Mwishowe mwishowe, hayawi hayawi, mwishowe huwa. And that is exactly what's going on in Uganda. Hours to the election. We have all the day's updates for you. We'll be giving you all the details about the final campaigns, the final push. And we'll be speaking to Solomon Serwanja later on in our bulletin, plus much more. Also, as Africa mourns the death of Boutros Ghali, the first African to head the United Nations. We will be speaking more about that in this bulletin, so please do stay with us for that and more. Let's take a look at our top stories tonight. Uganda's presidential hopefuls in final-ditch efforts to woo voters as campaigns come to a close. The newly appointed South Sudan Vice President yet to take up his position in Juba. Top diplomats back Somalia's electoral model 4 months ahead of the vote. All right, we will get to Uganda in just a moment, our top story tonight on Bottomline East Africa. But let's give you an update on what's going on in the DRC. A one-day general strike in the Democratic Republic of Congo called to pressure President Joseph Kabila to quit power when his mandate ends in December, paralyzed most economic activity in the capital Tuesday. Traffic on the normally bustling streets was greatly reduced. The shared taxis that ferry much of the city's workforce were not running, and the central market was empty. There was a heavy police presence in Kinshasa and the second city, Lubumbashi, but no reports of violence. By contrast, others said the strike was causing hardship in a city where many make a living as street sellers or market traders. The Constitution bars Kabila from standing for a third term at elections slated for November. He is yet to announce his plans, but critics say they fear he wants to delay the poll to retain power or change the law so he can run again. Kabila came to power when his father was assassinated in 2001. He won elections in 2006 and 2011 that the opposition says were rigged. The duration of his tenure has raised tension in a country that has never known a peaceful handover of power. More than 40 died in a police crackdown on protests in January 2015. Now, almost a week since South Sudanese President Salva Kiir reappointed rival leader Riek Machar as vice president, Machar is yet to return to the capital, Juba, to assume office. Machar, who fled Juba at the onset of political conflict 2 years ago, has since conditioned his return on the demilitarization of Juba and integration of police units. And as KTN's Michelle Ngele reports, President Kiir has given Machar a 7-day ultimatum within which to return to the South Sudanese capital. President Kiir has hinted the possibility of forming the transitional government on Friday with or without Machar's presence.
The decision just a few days ago by President Salva Kiir to reappoint the exiled Dr. Machar to the role of vice president raised hopes that a brutal 2-year conflict in the world's youngest nation might now come to an end. The warring parties, under pressure from Washington, the United Nations and other powers, signed a peace deal in August that called for a transitional government of national unity and a division of powers between the government and the opposition. Machar, who was vice president from 2005 until he was sacked in 2013 and who has yet to return to Juba since fleeing when war broke out in December 2013, has since welcomed the decree. The opposition leader had, however, initially stated that he would not return to South Sudan's capital, Juba, unless President Salva Kiir revokes the creation of 28 districts.
The 28th declaration of his states is a violation. The dissolution of the structures of the SPLM is a violation. The non-holding of the ceasefire on the ground is also a violation. So we see more violation rather than moving forward towards implementation of the agreement.
But after appointing him as vice president on the 11th of February, President Kiir has since invited Machar to report back to Juba in order to run his prerogative duties as part of the implementation of the peace agreement. But almost a week later, Machar is yet to return to Juba, begging the question, where is Machar? The opposition leader, who has since accepted his position of vice president, has conditioned his return on the demilitarization of Juba and on the transportation of his bodyguards, a strong force of nearly 3,000 police and army. Riek Machar is currently in Pretoria, South Africa, for an official diplomatic meeting seeking support to the implementation of the peace agreement he signed in August last year. The visit to Pretoria came a day after Machar returned from the Egyptian capital, Cairo, where he met Egyptian authorities, including the president, during more than 1 week's stay in the Arab Republic. Meanwhile, President Kiir has hinted on the possibility of forming the transitional government of national unity this week, giving Machar 7 days within which to report back to the South Sudanese capital. According to reports, President Kiir is expected to announce a government of 16 ministers, including 2 former detainees and 2 additional ones from other political parties other than Dr. Machar's faction if the leader declines to honor the 7-day ultimatum to return to the country. An interim administration without Dr. Machar, however, poses doubts as to whether the parties to the peace agreements were ready to honor the peace in the first place.
To act while the agreement is in the process of being implemented, act the way he acted now, gives us a lot of concerns. Is he serious about implementing the peace?
The UN has since urged Machar to return to Juba to address other peace-related issues that are needed to fully implement the power-sharing deal. Despite the peace accord, a UN report shows that both sides continue to seek new weapons. Fighting between government forces and Machar's rebels has especially been brutal on civilians. Tension continues to run high in South Sudan as it remains to be seen whether Machar will honor the 7-day ultimatum to return to Juba. Michelle Ngele, KTN News.
Now, Ugandans are counting down the hours to the election date of the 18th of February when the country goes to the polls to decide their next leaders. Today was the final day for campaigns for all the 8 presidential candidates to convince the electorate to back them for the highest office in the land. KTN's Solomon Serwanja is keeping an eye on the electoral process from the capital, Kampala.
The streets of Kampala were washed with all sorts of party colors on Tuesday as the candidates wooed voters in the dying moments of the campaign trail. Forum for Democratic Change presidential flag bearer Dr. Kizza Besigye woke up to a press conference to speak out on the violent clashes between his supporters and the police in Wandegear, a Kampala suburb.